If you were born after the year 2005, I almost said like the 1900s, but man, have you noticed as you get older, the range that you call young people gets bigger? But if you were born after 2005, I hope you'll pay a little bit extra attention this morning. This is Johavan Gonzalez. And when he was 8 years old, he was riding in a car with his family in Arizona when the car swerved and it went off the road and it went down a 100-foot ravine. And the car had Johavan and his little sister and his grandma and his pregnant mother. And he crawled out the driver's side window with his mom's phone, called 911, crawled back up the 100-foot ravine, stood there waiting to flag down the ambulance when it came. 8 years old. Michael Fink was one of the officers there. He said, I know a lot of adults who would not have been able to do what he did. If he had not been standing where he was standing, we probably would not have found them. We can ask the question, what difference can a kid make? Can young people be heroes? Well, Johavan Gonzalez proves yes. And there's so many other true stories about young people who did amazing things, brave things to help other people. So does that mean that God can use young people? Do they have value to him? Can God use young people to help him in his plan? Well, he's done it in the past, so I don't see why he cannot continue to do it today. I really want to make sure every person, regardless, no matter what age you happen to have been, whatever year you happen to have born in, we all have a place in the kingdom, and there's a place for what you can do. I want to look at a story this morning that frankly is not talked about nearly as much as I kind of think it should be. And I think it's going to help us to answer the question this morning because it is here. It is here in the Bible for a reason. And there are some details that the Holy Spirit wants us to know, to pay attention to. There is a quick but important story from the life of Paul that we read about in Acts chapter 23. I encourage you to open up there, follow along. So let me set up the story before we start reading. We're going to start in verse 12, but let me set up the story first. All right? The Jews in Jerusalem, they're getting really mad because Paul, their influence is going down. All right? The Jews in Jerusalem, their influence, their power is dropping. The influence of the gospel is going up. People keep leaving. They keep following. They want to become Christians. And it's all this Paul guy's fault. Now, Paul is already in prison right now. He's being tried for causing a big disruption. But there's some Jews that think, the courts, we're not going to let the courts handle this. We're going to handle this ourselves. All right, so that's the setup. I'm going to start reading in verse 12 now. And just as a heads up, usually I read out of the ESV, but I kind of like how the Christian Standard Bible, the CSB, translates this. I'm going to read out of that. If you're on an electronic thing and you want to switch over to that, follow along with me, you can certainly do that. If you can't switch, you're not going to have any problems following along, but I just want to let you know that. All right, Acts chapter 23, starting in verse 12. When it was morning, the Jews formed a conspiracy and bound themselves under a curse not to eat or drink until they had killed Paul. There were more than 40 who had formed this plot. These men went to the chief priests and elders and said, we have bound ourselves under a solemn curse that we won't eat anything until we have killed Paul. So you now, along with the Sanhedrin, make a request to the commander that he bring him down to you as if you were going to investigate this case more thoroughly. But before he gets near, we are ready to kill him. All right, so you got it? You got the setup? There's 40 guys. They have made a vow they're not going to eat or drink until they kill Paul. You guys, you just get him down here. Before he even gets here, we're going to ambush him on the road. We are going to kill him. Now our hero comes into the story in verse 16. But the son of Paul's sister, hearing about their ambush, came and entered the barracks and reported it to Paul. Did you know Paul had a nephew? Did you know he had a sister? I didn't either until I read this story. But here he is, and look at verse 17. Paul called one of the centurions and said, "Take this young man to the commander, because he has something to report to him." So he took him and he brought him to the commander and said, "The prisoner Paul called me, and he asked me to bring this young man to you because he has something to tell you." And I'm going to pause here because I know maybe there could be some people that are thinking, "All right, Josh, we don't know how old he is." All right, nephew. Yeah, I get that. Nephew, but he could still be maybe in his 20s. It says a young man, and you're absolutely right that we don't necessarily know. The Greek word here is usually used for somebody that is hit puberty, but they haven't been married yet. Man, depending upon the commentary, this could be anywhere between 12 and late teenage years. It's not an adult, but this next verse is why I feel this is probably somebody younger than we expect. Look at verse 19. The commander took him by the hand, led him aside, and inquired privately, "What is it you have to report to me?" This is not an action that you take with a grown-up. All right? I could grab a 6 or 7-year-old by the hand, right? 9, 10, maybe even a 13 or 14-year-old. I might grab them by the hand. Am I going to do that with a grown man? Would I do that with Lauren? Come on, Lauren. I hear that. Mike Halb, come on, Mike. I hear you've got something you want to say to me. No, this was not an adult. This was a young person. So, what did he say? Look at verse 20. The Jews, he said, have agreed to ask you to bring Paul down to the Sanhedrin tomorrow as though they're going to hold somewhat more careful inquiry about him. Don't let them persuade you, because there are more than 40 men of them lying in ambush, men who have bound themselves under a curse not to eat or drink until they have killed him. Now they're ready, and they're waiting for your consent. All right, so he tells the centurion what he learned. Is this enough? Is this enough to save his uncle's life? Look at verse 22. So the commander dismissed the young man and instructed him, "Don't tell anyone what you've informed me about this." And he summoned 2 of his centurions, and he said, "Get 200 soldiers ready with 70 cavalry and 200 spearmen to go to Caesarea at 9 tonight. Also provide mounts to ride so that Paul may be brought safely to Felix, the governor." So now, with an army of 470 extra soldiers, Paul is safely transported, and his life is saved. And I tell you, with absolute certainty, that God used this young man to make sure that his plan would still happen. Paul was a powerful servant, but he needed some help. So God used another servant, a young servant, to make sure that the Bible could continue to be written so that Christians could continue to learn from the teachings of his Uncle Paul. Now, you may not have an uncle that's an apostle. But I want to look at some things that this young man did and some characteristics that he showed. What he did and who he was, those are still things that can be emulated by any young person today. Can God use young people? You bet he can. He used this young man, and he can use you too. So here's how. Let's talk about what he did. First thing that he did, which is really important, was he showed concern for others. It might have been really easy for him to say, "I'm sorry, Unc, you're on your own. You got yourself into this. This has nothing to do with me." This young man had a heart that was concerned about other people, and he chose to step up. There's a time when it is very natural for a child to think about themselves. Man, I love babies. Don't you love babies? Oh, they're so cute and you got the cheeks, right? But they are so selfish. Right? Babies are only thinking about themselves. They don't care about the sleep you're not getting. They don't care about whatever you had on your to-do list for today. Nope, I'm hungry. I don't like this feeling in my diaper. I want somebody to hold me right now. Right now, it's all about them. But hopefully, there should come a time when they realize other people might need their help. They might realize I'm in a situation where I need to come in second or maybe even third right now because it's not about me. God expects us, no matter how young or how old, to show concern for other people. Paul told the Galatians in Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Paul told the Philippians in Philippians chapter 2, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, rather in humility. Value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. There's a really big rule in my family. My girls have heard it a lot growing up, and it is be the hero, not the bully. That's a big one in my family. In a time when it is so easy to pick on other people or to ignore the pain of others, it is even more important for the followers of God to be sensitive to the pains of others. Jesus showed compassion for people all the time. His heart was moved when he saw people in pain. And this young man felt the same. He was worried about what might happen to Paul, and so he was moved to do something about it. This young man showed concern for others, and it's something we all need to do as well. Another thing we did was he used his words for good. Another reality of living in today's society is that there are very few secrets. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort. Anybody a professional Facebook, Instagram stalker? Like I don't know anything. Who is this? Give me a second. I can find out. There's some of you out there and you're good at it. And so we all need to remember that before we post something. Young people, I promise you, if there is something you don't want somebody to know, like nobody, my parents are never going to find out. People at church are never going to find out. Trust me. Somehow they're going to find out. My mom's not even on Snapchat. Trust me. Somehow it gets out. So be careful, little hands, what you post. And we need to be really careful because a lot of people are not careful about what they post. And sometimes we learn stuff about people and we have to make a decision about what we're going to do with that information. Now, most of the time, the answer is absolutely nothing because it's none of your business. But there's other times where we just can't wait to tell somebody else because it's just so juicy. And it can be fun to talk to other people about other people. Thing is, that's called gossip and it's sin. Paul told Timothy in 2 Timothy 2, avoid godless chatter because those who indulge in it will become more and more ungodly. Proverbs 26:20, I love this one. Without wood, a fire goes out, and without gossip, a quarrel dies. Sometimes we know something and we might use it against them. We tear them down, make them feel like they have no value. But that is not what God expects us to do. That's not what disciples of Jesus are called to do. In fact, it's more than just not saying mean things. We're supposed to shine like lights. We're supposed to use our tongues for good, to help others, to encourage others. Paul said in Ephesians 4, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such that is good for building up, that fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Information is power, and this nephew used his powers for good. He obviously couldn't fight off 40 assassins, but he used what he knew in a good and powerful way. You never know what one kind or uplifting word can mean to somebody. Maybe you know somebody that's getting picked on. Maybe you know somebody like they're the ones that's always ignored, always feeling left out. A kind word from you can make the difference. Any of you ever had a bad day and then somebody said that one nice thing and you lived off of it for 2 days? It feels so good. I also want you to know, studies show that it takes 5 good compliments to outweigh one negative thing. That's just kind of the way we are. We just kind of hang on to the negative things more. So if you want to outweigh things, make sure you're praising a lot more than you're criticizing. But sometimes, like in this case, your words can actually save somebody's life. Use your words for good, not for evil. But I want to talk about the flip side of this, because the other thing that he did is he told somebody what he knew. This is a really serious point I want us to all understand. Sometimes you know something, you decide it's none of your business, but there are other times when you should not be silent. Everybody wants to be a good friend. I know that. It can be really confusing when you know something, but you're not sure if you should tell it or not. You know, snitches get stitches and all of that nonsense. But you learn something. Your friend tells you something that gets you, maybe you're worried, maybe it even gets you scared. Could be about things that they're putting in their bodies. It could be about dangerous places that they're going, people that they are seeing. Could be that they're talking about hurting themselves in some way. Scary things like that are happening to kids at a younger and younger age. And maybe you heard something and they told you, you can't tell anybody what I told you. And you want to be a good friend? And you're worried that they might get mad at you? But if you don't say anything, what could happen? There could come a time when somebody that you really care about shares some information and it scares you. Please don't keep secrets that are going to harm someone. That's not what a true friend is about. There are times where you have to tell, you have to talk. Are they thinking about hurting themselves? Are they going to go someplace? Are they going to meet somebody and you know that is not a good idea? Are they making sinful choices? They're going to put their soul in jeopardy. Keeping dangerous secrets is not showing love. It is not the right thing to do. Will that young person will that friend be upset with you? Maybe. But they will be safe. I have known too many young people that have kept a dangerous secret for somebody else. And every single time that story could have ended up better had they shared what they knew. God expects us to look out for each other. And sometimes that means our friends are going to be mad at us, but that does not mean that you're a bad friend. Proverbs chapter 27:6, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. James chapter 4:17, if anyone then knows the good that they ought to do and doesn't do it, it's a sin for them. So this young man, this young person, he told the right people the information that he knew to save a life. It was not an easy thing to do, but it was not the wrong thing to do. He showed concern. He used his words for good. He told someone what he knew. Those were the things that he did. Let's talk real quickly as we wrap up about some of the actions that he did and what that shows about his character. We looked at what he did. Let's look at what he was. He was courageous. He had to walk into a place filled with soldiers and military types, and maybe that could be a little intimidating, but more than that, he had to think about what might happen later. There were 40 assassins waiting somewhere to kill Paul. What would have happened if they found out why they couldn't get to Paul? The nephew knew that standing up for what was right was way more important, so he walked in there all by himself. But we know he wasn't by himself, right? Very last thing that Jesus ever said before he ascended back to the Father, Matthew 28, he said, "Surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Jesus is always with us. Even if you're facing the end of the world, or if for you it just feels like the end of the world, he's there with us. Paul said pretty much the same thing to Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 4 when he said, "At my first defense, no one came to my support. Everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them. But the Lord stood by my side and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed and all the Gentiles might hear it." God is always with you. And I know you hear that all the time. And the reason you hear that all the time is because it never stops being true. If you are a disciple of Christ, no matter how old or how young you are, God is with you. And if you are taking a stand for what is right, you're not alone. You are courageous. And God needs courageous people in his kingdom. He's going to need courageous people who say, "Hey, that's not nice. Let's not do that to them." They need courageous people to say, "Listen, I'm not going in there. You're not going there. None of us need to be going in there." Needs courageous people that's going to say, "Yeah, I believe in God and I believe what the Bible says." He needs adults that are that brave too. And a lot of times we're not. So sometimes we need courageous young people to show us how to be brave. This young man was also trustworthy. God trusted this boy with Paul's life. God knew this is somebody I can give a big, important job to, and it is going to get done. I trust this young person. We are supposed to be trustworthy. We're supposed to have integrity. Man, that is such a big word, such an important word, integrity. It just kind of means doing the right thing no matter what, regardless of who's around. And it is one of the most important characteristics for a follower of God. And the earlier you develop it, the better. Paul told Titus 2:7, "In everything set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching show integrity, seriousness." Solomon, wisest man that ever lived, said that it was more important than money. Proverbs 28:6, "Better is a poor man who walks in his integrity than a rich man who is crooked in all his ways." Can God trust you? Can other people? Can your parents trust you? Man, I will fully admit, it is scary to watch your teenager just go without you, off doing stuff by themselves, without you. And they've turned off Life 360, so you don't know where they are. The trust of your parents is so precious. Don't do things that are going to hurt that. Now, I'm not saying don't ever make a mistake, don't ever mess up, because that's going to happen. That's part of finding out who you are, and some of us never stop making mistakes. What I'm saying is don't damage your trustworthiness. You can make mistakes and still maintain your integrity. Trust is really hard to get back if it's broken. Do the right thing. Be truthful. And you know what? That doesn't just mean don't lie. It means tell your parents the thing that you know that they're really asking. Well, technically, they didn't ask me this, so I answered the question. You know what they wanted to know. Most of the time, your parents are going to find out anyway. And if they learn that you were deceitful in any way, it is going to be a long time before you get that trust back. And also you might think, well, they never said anything, so I guess they didn't find out. Parents have a line. They have so many conversations about you that you don't know about. I bet your parents have had some conversation that kind of looks like this. Like, this is going on, right? Yeah, I'm not crazy about it, but we're not going to say anything right now. Okay, but if this happens, we're having a conversation. Deal. Okay. It happens. And truthfully, there might be some things that you do that your parents never find out about. But there is no secret from God, right? You know that. There is not a single decision that you have ever made in your life that he doesn't know about. And the decisions that this young man had made up to this point in his life were such that God knew he could be trusted. God had some big plans for the kingdom. And he had a place for this young man. He's got some big plans for the kingdom that is still growing. And he's got some big plans for you, if he can trust you with that. So be trustworthy. If I were to ask you to list some of the great heroes from the Bible, would this guy make the list? Name the great heroes from Acts. Would this nephew of Paul be on? He might be on my list, I got to be honest now. Without this young boy, the New Testament would not have been finished. Have you noticed how many times I said, Paul said this? You know how many times I quoted Paul in backing up the points that I made? If Paul had been killed on the road, we would not have 1st and 2nd Timothy, Titus, Philemon, Colossians, Ephesians, or Philippians. None of that would have happened if this young boy had not stepped up. Well, Josh, I know God would have made sure that Paul was rescued. He would have made it happen somehow. God sent an earthquake to rescue Paul. He miraculously survived snake bites and shipwrecks. God would have done something to rescue Paul. I 100% agree with you. And in this case, he sent this young boy. Deuteronomy chapter 31:6. One of my favorites. We sing it a lot of times too. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God that goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. Man, do we really live like we believe that? He will not leave me. He will not forget about me. And he won't forget about you because he's got big plans for you. Can God use young people? Well, obviously he can. But you know what? It goes beyond that. Not only can, he really wants to. It's not like God is looking around for grown-ups, but when he can't find one, he says, well, I guess I'll give the kid the job. There are things that only you can do. There are plans that he has that only you can be a part of. So be the kind of servant, be the kind of soldier, here I am tying it in, that he can use. Show compassion for others. Use your words for good. Don't keep dangerous secrets. Be courageous. Be trustworthy. Be a hero. God used this young hero because he knew what was in his heart. What's in our heart this morning?